Hello, you're welcome to our session on business strategy. So for chapter 5, we're talking about introduction to business strategy. Now, what's the section overview? What are the issues we discussed in chapter 5? We're going to define business strategy, the first one. Then we'll also look at levels of strategy, then corporate level strategy. Then we'll also look at business strategy, functional strategy, and then also levels of planning as we have here. So these are the things we would see or discuss in this section. Okay, so generally it's about business strategy. So for section 1 of unit 5, we're going to look at the definition of strategy to begin with. Okay, now we know that in every business, we analyze its position in terms of strategy to enable us to make choices so we can employ or deploy those strategies. Okay, so even like a football match, the coach would have a strategy. Okay, so strategy is very important in every business. Let's look at one definition of strategy by Chandler. Chandler defines strategy as determination of the basic long-term goals and objectives of an enterprise and the adoption of course of action, allocating resources necessary for carrying out these goals. So in strategy, the key thing here we can talk about is, first of all, is a long-term goal for an organization. Then secondly, it tells you the course of action to take to accomplish your goal. In addition to this, what resources do we need to help us accomplish our goal? And that is what strategy is mainly about. So with Chandler's definition, it gives a general overview of what a business strategy is mainly about. There are numerous definitions. So if you look at it from Chandler, therefore, in strategic management, there are some key questions we need to ask ourselves, and they include: what business or businesses should we be in? And how can this business activity contribute to the competitive advantage of our enterprise? So let's say you live in an area and you want to set up maybe a business center where people can run photocopies. Okay, let's say you are in the academic city area, so you want to set up a copier center in a business center. If that's what you want to look in. Now, the question you must ask yourself is, maybe the others who are doing the same service there. Okay, so how can this business contribute to a competitive advantage of the organization? What can you do to give you an upper hand over others? And that is what you have to commit resources, as Chandler said, to implement your strategy to make you better than somebody else. Now, another definition by Drucker of a strategy. He defines strategy as a pattern of activities that seek to achieve the objectives of the organization and adapt its scope, resources, and operations to environmental changes in the long term. In effect, we're saying that, of course, there are numerous activities. Now, with these activities, what is the purpose you put in place for each activity? The key thing here is that you want to accomplish the objectives of the organization. You want to commit resources, having in mind changes in the environment. You factor all this in so that you can take advantage for long-term growth of your business. And that's also a definition by Drucker. So for what Drucker is saying, the key that we mentioned earlier on, okay, it means within a strategy, there are a series of organized activities. Now, why do you involve these organized activities? Is to accomplish your strategy. Again, in definition, we realize that the mention of strategy is mainly for long term. Okay, so within 5 years, 10 years or more to the future. That's what strategy mainly will do. Okay, and more often than not, the environment will play a role in determining the strategy you would want to use. Okay, of course, there could be changes in the business environment. If you remember, we discussed the environment in the earlier chapters, okay, which could have a positive impact on the business or a negative impact on the business. So in line with your strategy, you may predict the changes in the environment which could have an impact on your business, so that should it occur quickly, you are not affected, but you can still move on and take advantage. Why? The environment keeps on changing, and therefore with strategy, you do different things with different resources at different times. You need to adapt to the environment. So you may have to consider these questions. Where are we now? Okay, now where do you want to be in the next 5 years? Okay, if you are moving from here to there, how do we get there? Okay, how large should our company be? Okay, what will we be doing? Where will it be operating? Are we going to open more branches? Do we need more employees? What caliber of competencies or skills do we need? Now, what technology should we use? Okay, so take for instance, Ghana Post. If I should ask you, how many of you still go to post office to go post letters? Okay, that function is becoming very minimal. And therefore, if I work with Ghana Post, then I must develop a strategy to still remain relevant in the industry. So these questions will help me assess myself and therefore be able to progress ahead. Now, let's look at definition by Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington on strategy. Okay, for them, they're talking about exploring corporate strategy. Now, what is a corporate strategy? What is strategy? The direction and scope of an organization over a long term. And once over a long term, what does it seek to do? It achieves advantages in a changing environment. So it will adapt resources, okay, commit resources, not only resources, okay, not only physical resources, but also the skills of the staff, made up of their competencies. So why will it commit these resources? So that whatever expectations they have in terms of stakeholders, which we discussed in earlier chapters, that can also be met. And this is a much broader definition again, like Drucker's definition. Okay, so this time, the focus is on the use of resources and skills to give you a competitive advantage in your business activities. And for competitive advantage, you are doing something much more better than any competitor may do. If I should ask about networks, either MTN or Airtel Tigo or Vodafone, in terms of data, okay, who is the best for you? Who has advantage? Okay, of course, locations may give differences, but it means that each of them must do something much more better than what another competitor is doing. And that's what we mean by competitor advantage. And that's what definition by Scholes, Johnson, and Whittington is about strategy. Okay, so as we commit resources, our bottom line is that the wealth of shareholders should be maximized. Let's not forget, these are people who have invested in the business and they expect maximum returns from their investments. And therefore, we meet the expectations in terms of strategy and the resources we commit. Okay, so in doing this, there's some range or scope of decisions that you may have to make. First of all, you need to decide the scope of the entity's activities. What business should we be in? That is one. People are not posting letters as often as before, but can we also have a service whereby we can just do quick deliveries for people? Okay, maybe you can think about that. Okay, now, whatever we are thinking of in terms of activity, it should be in line with the environment. This is, we have more Okada people also doing dispatch services, right? Good. As part of Okada people doing dispatch, we have many ways of sending messages now, social media, etc. So if Ghana Post may want to come out, then they must look at activities within the environment where they are making those decisions and know which resources they must commit, okay, to run their strategy. So the key thing here, do we have enough employees who have the right competencies? Okay, now they have access to enough materials to work with, be it supplies, equipment, IT systems, etc. Okay, that aspect deals with resource capability. Take note of the term, resource capability. Now, if you have resources, how do you allocate, how do you deploy the resources for the business activities? Okay, now what is a framework under which decision making can work at the operational level? Let's not forget, the top level is for strategy, middle level for tactical decisions, lower level is operational. And whatever is at the top, we'll see it at the operational level. Okay, now what are the values and expectations of people we have in positions within the organization, especially those of power? Okay, therefore, their values and expectations would also impact on the strategy we have. If their values are not in favor of our strategy, what will happen? It will just be an empty barrel. And therefore, we need to assess their values, the expectations, and then decide the direction we want the business to go. Okay, so in many cases we have here, implementing change within an entity that adapts successfully to its environment. And these are the key things we can talk about as we look at strategy within the organization. And this is what we mean according to Scholes and Whittington and Johnson. Okay, so if you look in your book, there is a sample business strategy. That is, if you look at page 131 of your textbook, okay, you can refer to that. Okay, and that's what we have the slides on a sample business strategy that you can look at within an organization. Okay, now let's move on to levels of strategy within an organization. The levels of strategy within an organization, and that is at page 132 of your book. There's a diagram or a triangle that shows the level of strategy in an organization. It begins the corporate strategy, which is at the top, followed by a business strategy, and then the functional strategy. Now, what do these strategies mean? We'll talk about that shortly. That's the diagram I referred to earlier on. Okay, so in corporate strategy, the scope will look at what business should we be in. That's where we make some decisions. Okay, then we look at the next one, which is the business strategy. How should we compete in each selected business? So at this level, you might have thought of the business you want to be in, but how do we compete with each selected business? And the functional strategy for each business function, how can that function contribute to the competitive advantage of the entity? And for this, we're not just looking at competitive advantage, we're looking at sustained competitive advantage that we can have to think of. Okay, and that's what the levels of strategy will look out for. Now, so for example, if you want to bring a new airline to Ghana, okay, for domestic routes, then it is important that you look at the business, that is aviation. Okay, you want to bring an aircraft that will transport people from domestic routes. That is your corporate strategy. Now, how would you compete in a certain business? That becomes your business strategy. Are you going to use prices? Okay. Are you going to use quality of service? Okay. What do you tend to do? Then the functional strategy is what you do, which others are not doing, to give you a sustained competitive advantage. Okay. And this is how we discuss the levels of strategy in the business. Now, looking at this further, we have consistency of strategy, still on page 132. Okay, we're saying that whatever strategy we have, from corporate, business, functional, it should be consistent with each other so that it can help us achieve the overall objectives of our business. Okay, of course, each strategy may want to have its own objective. Okay, but in all, it should accomplish the overall objective of the business. So like the airline business, we said that, well, the aim is to become the best airline service, maybe for domestic carrier in Ghana. Okay, now with that in mind, now it comes from customer service as an example to doing this business. Okay, quality of aircraft and comfort, your pricing is there. Okay, and there are many benefit factors. You allow for extra luggage or something. What about kids? Your marketing strategy. Okay, all these things will come in, right? Oh, it should sum up to the overall corporate strategy of the organization. It shouldn't be diverse from the main strategy that we want to accomplish. Okay, so with corporate strategy, as we have here, then what does it involve? There are some elements, okay, that helps us determine corporate strategy. And what are these elements? The first one is deciding the purpose of the entity. The second one, deciding the scope of the activities of the entity. Third one, matching the chosen business activity to the external environment, okay, and the entity, and also to its available resources. Okay, now let's look at what these ones mean. We'll add a few others to it. So for the first one, under the element of corporate strategy, you are deciding the purpose of the entity. So our entity is to introduce another domestic airline carrier to Ghana. Why is this entity in existence? That is, if it's already there. Okay. Now, what is our mission? What is our vision? What are we trying to accomplish? Okay. Now, of course, if you have shareholders, legal owners, okay, then he will expect that at the end we make profits. If his shareholders, they want dividend. Okay, so this should be in our mind as we decide on the purpose of the entity. Is it for profit or not for profit organization? Okay, so it's most important that customers and employees, okay, would understand why the business is in existence. That's the first aspect of our corporate strategy. The second key aspect, deciding the scope of the activities of the entity. So, what should be our range of business? Is it for only passenger or cargo? Okay, or tourism? Okay, maybe that's what we want to look at. So, under corporate strategy, the next activity or element is deciding the scope of the activities of the entity. So, if it's for transport, now you ask yourself, okay, now you make it, is it for bus, train, okay, space, okay. Now you have to decide all these things. So you're deciding the scope of activities of the entity. But this can be done in isolation from the environment. As we mentioned, the environment plays an important role in business activities. And if we're going to match your air travel business to the environment, okay, and check whether you have available resources. Okay, that's why the choice of activities should be consistent with the conditions in the environment. So in Ghana at the moment, we may have two domestic carriers, I think Africa World and Passion Air. I think these are the two in existence now. I don't know if there's another one. Okay, so now you should choose to sell that or sell that customers want to buy for which the technology exists. Now, if you count the third or fourth force, that means that you may get access to other people who have booked other airlines, who have the skill, the training, etc. Okay, now the airport is there and it can serve the purposes. Of course, we open up more airports. I guess Sunyani may come up soon. We are told about the whole airport, whether it's really working, anything. Okay, so is that supported there? So look at the environment, whether there are resources support. Okay, and let's not forget, there are rules and regulations which governs every business. And therefore, whatever decision you make should be in line with the rules of the country. It should also be consistent with the resources you have. Okay, and that's what we mean by matching the chosen activity to the external environment, as well as having available resources to run the business. Now, let's not forget that if it's a corporate business, if it's a corporate strategy, there are stakeholders or people who have invested in the business. Okay, and whether it is for profit or not for profit purposes, let's not forget that when you introduce or you put your plan into action, it should be able to meet the expectations of the owners of the business, whether for profit or not for profit. Okay, and that's why it's important to match the purpose to the expectations of the owners of the organization. Now, let's look at some of the expectations of the owners. If it is a commercial company, what do they want? The owners are the shareholders. So at the end, they want to realize an income on the investment. There should be growth in their wealth. Okay, so that if they invest so much, then whatever they invest in the business should also increase by that much. That's one of the owner's expectations. Okay, so you have an example here that objectives for corporate strategy might therefore be stated in terms of raising the share price by X% over the next 5 or 10 years. Of course, if I'd invested 1,000 Ghana cedis in the business, I believe that by the next 4 or 5 years, that 1,000 cedis investment should have risen to about 10,000 cedis, aside the profits I would make. Okay, if it's a state-owned organization, then the government is the owner, right? More often than not, well, for most government organizations, they're there to promote the social well-being and therefore not so profit-oriented. But whatever it is, their expectations will not differ from the corporate strategy of the company, as we spoke about. The next people we can talk about stakeholder expectations. We first spoke about the owner expectations and the corporate strategy. Who is a stakeholder? Let's not forget what we discussed in earlier chapters. These are people who have a strong interest in the organization and what it does. Okay, so let's not forget, we mentioned employees, customers, government, suppliers, so internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and other interest groups. Okay, these are, and they also have expectations in the business. Okay, so we can look at these expectations and determine how they run in the business. So to sum up what we just discussed, we have discussed the first aspect of corporate strategy. And so that is what we just discussed, corporate strategy. In that corporate strategy, we look at some key elements of corporate strategy. Decide the purpose of the entity is most important. Then develop or decide the scope of the activities of the entity. Then match it to the resources you have as well as the environment. Okay, let's not forget that there are stakeholders who are interested in your corporate strategy. And we mentioned the owners of the business as well as other stakeholders. They all have expectations from the business. Okay. Now, the other strategy we'll talk about is the business strategy. And if you have your book, page 134, talks about the business strategy. It is called the competitive strategy. Please don't forget this. So now, what's the focus of competitive strategy? It is concerned with how some business activities within the entity will contribute towards the achievement of the corporate strategy. Okay, so we mentioned earlier on that at the corporate strategy, we have its own objectives. Business strategy has own objectives before the functional strategy. But all these strategies will fit into the overall strategy of the organization. Okay, so let's say we have a large group of companies that may have subsidiaries. And the subsidiaries may be classified as SBUs, strategic business units. And each of these units may have to generate income for the organization. Okay, now take note that each SBU is a different business. Let's give an example. Let's say Tobinco Pharmacy. You know, the pharmacy may have maybe they have, I think apart from the pharmacy production, they have a school where they train people in pharmacy. Okay, So the school training aspect is SBU. The pharmaceutical company is a training business unit. Okay, maybe if it's about I don't know that the owner is Atinka FM belongs to the same organization, so it's also a strategic business unit. Okay, so to what extent can each unit compete on the market successfully? And that's one aspect we can focus, okay, as we think of the business strategy. Let's not forget, it is also called the competitive strategy. So to what extent can you compete on the market with whatever products we have? Now, to do this very well, Porter, as we mentioned, spoke about two key things here. It was based on cost leadership and differentiation. What is cost leadership and what is differentiation? This time can become the lowest cost producer on the market. Okay, so you produce at a much lower cost, so you sell at much lower price to make it unattractive for others to also come on the market. As you sell at a lower price, okay, because you're also enjoying lower cost, what will happen? You get a bigger share. Most people are price sensitive, and as such, may want to buy from the best source as long as the price is lower. Okay, so for cost leadership, to make you competitive, then you are producing at a much, or you are selling at a much lower cost to your customers, and that's to give you an advantage over others. The other one is not differentiation. Okay, so to what extent can you make products or service which may be different from those of the competitors and which will be quite better than what they are doing? Okay, so take note, a company that is not the least cost producer can therefore succeed by offering products or service that customers will pay a higher price. Okay, so this time, let's say MTN. We all know that MTN is a bit expensive, but they have been much consistent than other networks. Okay, so what's happening here? Differentiation. You make your product a little different and much better than your competitor. Okay, so the price will not be a real focus though, but the quality of the product. Okay, so you have an example here in your book, I think page 135, okay, which will explain this further as you read the example in your book. Okay, so let's look at the last aspect of the strategy, that is the functional strategy. So as we said earlier on, the levels of strategy, we discussed the corporate strategy, then we've mentioned the business strategy. Okay, and now we're now on functional strategy. Let's not forget the other name for business strategy, which is competitive strategy. So now let's look at the third one, functional. And this relates to functions within organization, manufacturing, distribution, marketing, etc. Okay, what's the purpose of these functions as they play? The main purpose is to support the business strategy and corporate strategy. So it's like that's the operational level. After having the strategy in mind, you must put it to work. Where will you see it work? At the functional level of the organization. And there's an example at page 135 of your book, okay, which explains the functional strategy, okay, and the objectives of the functional strategy. Okay, so in effect, we're saying that for functional strategy, it comes to ensure that there are the main corporate strategy as well as business strategy that we put to use. Okay, so the examples given is what we have in your book. Now, to sum up this point, we can look at the note of levels of planning. So this has been defined by R. N. Anthony. Those are three levels of planning organization, namely the strategic plan, tactical plan, operational plan. And we know that each of these plans will happen at a level or occur at a level of the organization. So for instance, if a strategic plan, SP, strategic planning, this time you identify the objectives of the entity you want to work with. Okay. Now, they include the corporate strategy plans. business strategic plans and the functional strategic plans. Okay. Now, after having a long-term strategic plan, it can be broken down into tactical. It's somewhat like a short-term plan, short-term, medium-term plan, okay, to accomplish objectives. Okay, so budget, annual budget, etc. Example of tactical plans. Okay, that can help you accomplish your long-term strategic objectives. In your budget, you can determine your revenue and your expenditure and decide to save money for expansion or to accomplish more objectives. Okay, and the last one is the operational planning. Okay, and this is about day-to-day. It occurs at the supervisory level in the organization. How work is divided each day to accomplish tasks daily. Okay, so that in the end, you will accomplish short-term goals as well as long-term goals. And that's what we mean at the operational level of planning. So this brings us to the end of section 1 of chapter 5. We are moving on to section 2. It deals with elements of strategic management and business analysis. And that's what we're going to discuss shortly from section 2. Okay, so now for the second part of chapter 5, some elements of strategic management and business analysis. For this unit, we're going to discuss strategic position, strategic choices, and strategy into action, and the scope of business analysis. Okay, as defined by Johnson, Scholes, and Rosenthal. Okay, now let's begin with strategic positioning. Strategic positioning. Now, what is strategic positioning about? What it's about the position of the organization. So we ask ourselves, what is the position of our organization? Okay, the key thing here is that we want to assess where we are. So let's take the universities as an example. There is a ranking system for universities. Okay, now these ranking systems, they will give positions to investors in terms of performance. So the key thing here is that where are we now? Okay, now in this regard, if you're an organization, there's a need to understand the position of the company in the markets in which you are functioning. Are we doing better than our competitors? Okay, in what ways are our competitors more successful? In what ways are we leading organization? Okay, so you're going to compare and see who has a competitive advantage over the other. Now, one thing that you need to consider in the strategic position is about the environment. So you keep seeing that the environment keeps coming up over and over and over. So how would changes in the environment affect the business? Okay, so this one thing you may also look at in terms of your positioning. Okay, so if you're well positioned in the market and you know where you stand in terms of competition, then you will know how the environment can also impact your business. Okay, now those things that can occur in the environment includes changes in technology or new laws that may affect your business. Okay, so these things will help you determine your position. Also, are there any lifestyle changes? A lifestyle change may be either in favor or against the organization. Okay, so let's say those who are producing phone booths those days to sell, so that at least you fix phone booths, you buy a rechargeable card, and they go and slot in the phone book machine, make a call. Okay, there has been a lifestyle change, and people are in favor of mobile phones. So who uses phone book now? Okay, so it's important that to determine your position and to maintain your position, then you may have to make a decision about where you're going, what you need to do. That's why your objectives must be realistic. Okay, so you know where you want to be in the future. And this really affects your positioning as a business organization. Okay, so there are 3 aspects to consider as you look at your positioning. The key aspect, your environment, that is one. The strategic capability of the entity, and expectations and purposes. Let's look at what each of these mean. Okay, so again, as you look at your strategic positioning, it's important to consider the environment. What are key things in the environment? Let's not forget, in the environment, there are threats and there are opportunities. So you must assess these ones and see which one or how threats would impact your business negatively. Okay, these are things in the environment which can threaten the survival and existence of your business. So how would they threaten the organization and how can you overcome them? Now, are there things in the environment which may create opportunities for you? You may have to consider that as well. Okay, so that you exploit opportunities to the advantage of your business. That is one. Again, we can talk about the second aspect. So we're explaining these three key things, okay? And that strategic positioning. The environment is one. The second one is strategic capability of the entity. And with this, we're looking at how you may assess your capability. Where are your strengths? What are you good in doing? Where lies your weaknesses? Okay, how can you improve upon your weaknesses? Okay, and that's what you look at. Are you doing something which your rivals are doing much better? Okay, so in a way, you are analyzing your strength and your weakness. That's the second aspect of strategic positioning. Then the third one deals with expectations and purposes. Okay, so why are we in existence? What are we trying to achieve? Just like the corporate strategy. Okay, and now to know about this, we put this in a mission statement. And the mission statement should guide us throughout what we seek to do. So, an example here. A university might have a mission statement that its purpose is to provide a center for academic and scientific research. Okay, that's an example. So the key thing here, Center for Academic and Scientific Research. Then what about the company too? To provide returns to your owners, shareholders. Okay, maximize shareholders' worth. Now, these are expectations and they serve as the reason for which you're in existence. Okay, and let's not forget the aspect of ethical duty as a company. So you're a corporate citizen. Okay, and therefore your aim is also to protect the environment for sustainable businesses. Okay, so all these things come under the key thing here in terms of expectations and purposes for strategic positioning. So let me go back again to give us an overview of our discussion. We're talking about strategic positioning, and then we said, examine your environment. What would you see in the environment? You will see opportunities, you see threats. You know what to do about that. The next one, strategic capability of the entity. Your strength and your weakness as an organization will be determined here. And then for expectations, we know expectations of, and we get this through even our mission. Okay, so you have seen an example of missions organizations and what the owners also expect from us as a business. So the expectations about our business should be linked to the ethical influences. It's important that the corporate mission, corporate culture should be determined at this level. That's what we've explained to this point. So we've explained this key item under strategic positioning, the positioning of an organization. Okay, and the next thing we'll talk about is strategic choices. Okay, so let's not forget, we're talking about, if you take your book again, under section 2 of chapter 5, we look at elements in strategic management. And the elements are 1, strategic positioning, which we just discussed. Looking at strategic choices as the second one. Now, what is strategic choices? Okay, now under this element, you are identifying possible strategies, okay, that can give you an advantage over others. Okay, so you may have alternatives. Should we choose A or B or C? What are the likely outcomes of choosing any of these? Okay, then you're going to make a choice, which could be a preferred strategy, different from alternatives that you have. Okay, and under this, we can break it down to corporate level and international, business level strategies, and development directions and methods. Okay, so let's look at the first one, corporate level and international. What does this mean? Now, you are making decisions about what you should be doing. Okay, now for companies, you are making decisions about which products or service you'll be selling and the markets. Okay, there could also be an international aspect of strategic choice at this level. That is, if you want to go to other countries, how do you do that? So we know of a Casa Preco. It's not only producing in Ghana, but we know it's also moved to other West African markets. So what made them decide? They made a choice. Instead of producing only in Ghana, we can move to other markets and also establish there. Okay, so you make a decision whether to operate locally or abroad. But where do we make these choices? Mainly at the business strategy level. I hope you remember that. So let's not forget, we mentioned the corporate, the business, the functional as the levels of strategy. Okay, so choices are made at the business level. And at this stage, you make a choice between costs and differentiation, which we've already explained. Okay, so if you want to be a cost leader, you want to produce or sell at a much lower price. If your strategy is differentiation, it means you are coming up with something unique which your competitors are not doing. Okay, and that's what has been explained from here. You make your product or service different from those of your competitors so that it gives you a sustained advantage over rival companies within your strategy. And let's not forget, in making a choice, okay, you make a choice about the directions in which your business would want to go. So we're talking about strategic choices, and we've said the fact that you may decide whether to operate at the corporate level, international, and then occurs at the business level. Now, talking about the third aspect of strategic choice, which is developmental or development directions and methods. So where lies your direction? Where do you want to go? And that is what you will have to look at. Will you have a strategy of internal growth? Okay, this is how we look at our direction and methods. Do we want to acquire other businesses? Okay, do you want to partner other businesses? Where do you want to go? Okay, how do you want to grow our business? And that comes in the development directions and methods. Okay, now we can look at this further, that in making a choice by ANSOF comes up with ways by which companies can grow. Okay, one is through market penetration. This time, you try to increase your market share by selling more. Okay, that's one way you can grow your business. Okay, then we have market development. This time, you are growing by selling the company's existing products to new markets. So you may think of going outside the country. In Ghana, we start from Accra, then Kumasi, then Takrady, then Tamale. But that's how you may grow if you want to go within. Or wherever you start from, you go to other areas. Or you make your products better. You develop new products to sell to the same markets. That's product development. Okay. Or you may think of diversifying. So you don't rely on just one product, but other products, so that if there is a need that one doesn't do well, the others can support. Okay, so let's have an overview of our discussion again to make you follow up. Now, we've spoken about strategic positioning. Okay, these are elements of strategic management, strategic positioning. And in that research, you have to consider three key things: the environment, strategic capability, and expectations and purposes. Then we came to the next element, which is strategic choices. And the strategic choices, we said that it is made up of corporate level and international, business level strategies, and development directions and methods. And in that, we said that you may decide to expand your business. But one way which can grow your business, or there are 4 ways we can grow your business, and they include market penetration, market development, product development, and diversification. Okay, as you move on, we would explain these aspects in detail. But let's look at the nature of strategic choices. Okay, how should we make a strategic choice? Okay, now, if you make a wrong choice, what will happen? If you make a wrong choice, yes, you may select unsuitable strategies, and that could affect the business seriously. And therefore, how you ask yourself these questions: what is the best way to make the entity succeed and achieve its objectives? Okay, in making your decision, then it should be based on happenings in the environment. Focus on your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, or stick to what you know can do best. Then ask yourself again, should you choose cost leadership or differentiation? Okay, so you are making a choice. Okay, and the choice you make can either advance your cause or pull you down. Should we produce only one product or one market, or we can diversify our products and produce and sell in different markets? Okay, now how can we make the best use of our resources? Okay, should we run a centralized organization or a decentralized organization? Okay, what management style is appropriate? These are questions that you may have to make choices. And in making the best choice that can advance your organization is what strategy is mainly about. Okay, so we've spoken about positioning. After positioning, we've spoken about choices. Now we're going to put the strategy into action. And that is the next element, okay, in strategic management. Okay, so how do we implement our strategy? There are 3 aspects: organizing, enabling, and managing change. So in organizing, the key thing, we are putting in place a structure. As we learn in management, right? In organizing, we break down the tasks into similar units, etc., to create departments and lines of reporting and communication. And we hold people accountable for different aspects of the chosen strategy. So as we break down the tasks into similar units, okay, and assign roles, okay, then we are organizing the structure of the organization, the structure under which decision making would flow, under which our strategy would be accomplished. Then another aspect of putting into action is enabling. This time, we are going to use all our strategic resources, people, financial, technical, etc. So to what extent can we use our resources to our advantage? Okay, and that happens under the enabling. Okay, enabling means enabling it to achieve success through the effective use of resources. So to what extent can you deploy resources for the advantage of the organization? And that happens under enabling. Okay, so in the next one is about managing change. Okay, so managing change. So in this regard, it's about a day-to-day activity which occurs in the organization as you try to implement your strategy. But how do you manage change effectively? And to implement change, it involves the first thing here, improvement in the business processes. Okay, that may require implementing change. Now, change can help you improve your work processes to become more effective. Okay, so sometimes there could be new projects or investments. So it's important that how you implement them can lead to a success of your strategy. Okay, you will need support. Okay, IT system support to also implement change, and all these resources must be deployed well for the benefit of the organization. Okay, now the next aspect that we will talk about as we bring in this section to a close is the scope of business analysis. So let me go back again, and that should be a guide for our discussion. Okay, so we said that for this section 2, the elements we're discussing: strategic position, strategic choices, putting strategy into action, and that's what we just discussed. And now we're moving on to the scope of business analysis. Okay, the scope of business analysis. Now, what does it mean? We are implementing strategy through normal activities which we do day to day, and therefore it's most important that we coordinate the activities of everyone in the organization. Okay, so work is designed, and each work or each task to carry out, there's a relationship in the organization. Okay, some of this work may end where someone else will begin. Okay, there's a continuation. Okay, and if the system is not managed effectively, then we may not be able to achieve our objectives. Therefore, it's important that there's efficiency in work process, workflow, and relationships managed in the organization for organizational effectiveness. Okay, so as we implement strategies with new projects coming up, then we must ensure that we are implementing our strategy effectively. As I mentioned earlier on, you require the support of IT services to help you accomplish your strategy. You also require finances, okay, so that you can also do so very well. So you must have to analyze your financial position of the organization, which is very important. So our discussion is an overview, okay. For business analysis, we're saying that we have a strategic position, A. Then there's a strategic choice, and then you put it into action. Okay, as you put it to action for the business, that's what the last aspect does. Okay, the scope of business analysis, then business processes change. You need IT to manage a project, you need financial analysis. Okay, so a summary of the elements is what we've discussed under this unit. Now let's move to the third section, okay, the process of strategy development. And on this unit, therefore, we'll look at strategy lenses, strategy as a design, as an experience, as ideas, okay. We'll also consider Mintzberg 5 P's for strategy and strategic planning frameworks, okay. And that's what we'll consider under this section, the process of strategy development. How, therefore, the question is, how, therefore, can we develop strategies? How can we develop strategies? Okay, now, one way of doing this is seeing or making a distinction between deliberate strategy, emergent, and incremental strategy. If you can distinguish between the three issues here, emergent strategy, deliberate, and incremental, then that can help us develop our strategy. So the first question, what therefore is a deliberate strategy? It has other names. It could also be known as prescriptive strategy or rationally planned strategy. Where does it come from? Mainly from our formal strategic planning process. Now, in the formal strategic planning process, management that carries out a number of activities, and they include carrying out a strategic position analysis. We spoke about positioning earlier on, identifying and evaluating the strategic alternatives, and then we make a strategic choice. After making the choice, we implement the chosen strategies for our business activity. But it's most important that we review our business plan over and over and over, okay, to make way for changes that may occur. Okay, so we're saying that to help us develop strategy, we must make a distinction between a deliberate strategy. We've defined a deliberate strategy. We said that it's called a prescriptive strategy and rationally planned strategy, normally done in part of the strategic plan of the organization. Okay, good. So now, talking about this, what then is emergent strategy? Emergent strategy. Now, for emergent strategy, it is not formally planned, take note, but it comes due to a response for unforeseen events. And that's how we see emergent strategy, as we have here. Okay, so due to unforeseen events or opportunities that may come up, okay, it may give you an idea, okay, as to how to approach situations. So now, though it's a new strategy that has come up, you may have to take note of how you apply. Okay, so take note. We mentioned deliberate. It is planned, rational. Okay, emergent. It came out of an unforeseen development. But the key thing here for emergent strategy is that though you may have a formal plan, okay, sometimes you have to be willing to adopt new strategies to add to the formal plan, though they are not part of the formal plan. Okay. And then you may add the emergent one to the deliberate strategy. Then the incremental strategy was about. Incremental means growth over a period of time. Okay, so it is developed slowly over time. Okay, by making small changes, okay, to existing strategy. Let's say that the government wants to introduce new currency. So they don't just dump the new currency on the markets. And they want to withdraw. So they do that by withdrawing maybe an old currency before they introduce a new currency. And it's incremental strategy. Okay. So they make small changes to the existing ones over time to ensure survival. Okay. And take note of the term here. There's a term here known as strategic drift. Okay. Now, if you're not careful, you may move away from your key direction, your key strategy, and that's what we refer to as strategic drift. Okay, so it's important that in organizations, as we look at strategy, we've spoken about the three key things we're looking at strategy. We mentioned the first one as the deliberate strategy. We've discussed the emergent strategy and incremental strategy. And I guess we can distinguish between the three as we want to develop our strategy. Now let's look at strategic lenses or strategy lenses by schools. Okay, by schools. Now, what is strategy lenses? Okay, now a lens is what we look through. Okay, by this time, there are three ways of looking at strategy development. So we look at strategy development. Let's not mix up our earlier discussion. We say that to develop a strategy, first of all, we must know the difference between these forms of strategy. We mentioned deliberate, right? We mentioned emergent, we mentioned incremental. And for this level, we're saying that, well, to develop a strategy, you have to look at three key things. Namely, the design, the experience, and then the ideas. Okay, design, experience, and ideas. So let's look at strategy as a design lens. Okay, now from this, we can see that to bring out a strategy, there was a design process. You thought things through in a logical manner. Okay, you planned to bring about the strategy. Okay, so what is involved in the process? We learned that to develop a strategy, it's a formal, deliberate process, which means you think things through and you plan what you want to do. Now, in thinking of the strategy, you may make a choice, okay, before you may think of implementing the strategy. It means that there could be various alternatives, okay, which may come out before you may implement a strategy. But you make the strategies logical and clear. Who makes these choices? Senior management, because they are called strategic decision makers. Now, in looking at this, we take note of the fact that the strategy should be well suited in the business, in terms of the structure, the hierarchy. Okay, so that once everybody is at work and play, we know that we're all working towards our strategy. But for the lens to work, the design lens to work, is based on some assumptions and beliefs. What are these assumptions and beliefs? Now, we believe that the quality of our decision making is improved by careful, systematic thinking. Why? Because the environment of the business is complex and the future is uncertain. Now, the question I may ask, okay, did many businesses know about COVID coming? Most did not know about COVID coming, okay? But when COVID came, it affects some business, not negatively or positively, okay? However, in developing strategy, we need to plan for the strategy. And the quality of the planning is improved by the tools we use, the techniques, the modeling we use. That's why we say strategy as a design is similar to deliberate strategy. Okay, let's take note about that. It's similar to deliberate strategy. We learned that it is a planned and rational. So as you sit down to make a plan of a strategy, we see it as deliberate strategy for the business. Now, one thing we may also consider strategy as an experience. What does it mean? Over time, we develop strategy based on the experiences you've encountered. Okay, you've been able to adapt to different strategies. Okay, and these strategies may feed into the overall current strategy. Okay, so it is based on experience acquired over time that shapes your strategy. Okay, and they are influenced mainly by the culture of the entity, how things have been done over a period of time, the attitudes, the beliefs, the people who work for it, and the history of the organization. So if things have worked for you in the past, it's possible that you may not have to change, make much change to what has happened in the past, okay, to be successful. No. But over time, you may add on to the strategy. That would mean by the strategies we develop incrementally. And now we mentioned the concept of strategic drift. When did this occur? Now we expect us to go through a period of continuity where you may add on to strategies gradually or incrementally. Okay, but if you're not careful, you may move away from your main strategy. Okay, and as you move away from the main strategy, then there is a drift. Take note. Now, when strategies are increasing inappropriately or dealing with the strategic position of the entity, then what happens? You are shifting from the main. Okay, so it's most important that you assess your environment so you don't move away, though you may be adding to your strategy gradually, you don't move away from the key reason for which you're in existence. Okay, and that is what we mean by the strategic drift. So, talking about this area, we've spoken about our strategic lenses. Okay, earlier on, we said that we discussed these three aspects in developing a strategy: emergent strategy, deliberate, and incremental strategy. And we're looking through the strategic lens. What did we see as we looked through the strategic lens? We saw a design of the strategy. We saw a strategy as an experience, things that have happened in the past, which may help you. And now we may look at strategy as ideas. Okay, what does this one mean? Okay, now this do not explain innovation. The first two is speaking about design and experience. But what will bring about innovation? Ideas. How you think and come up with new ways of doing things. Okay, so if important new strategies don't come from formal planning, where do they come from? They may come from people who may have new ideas as to how things should go on in the organization. Okay, so innovation may come from the third perspective, strategy as an idea. Okay, so taking note of these aspects, that for this to work, then strategy development should rely on radical new ideas. And it's not always that should come from management of the organization. Sometimes those who are taking operations can think strategy for the organization. Okay. Secondly, innovation happens as a result of variety and diversity. So if we encourage diversity in the organization, the new ideas may come, innovation may come up, and therefore we can also improve our strategy. Now, when new ideas come, they need the support of management for it to work. Okay, but if we follow traditional hierarchies, okay, no, and there's huge bureaucracy in the organization, please forget about development strategy as an idea. So we may develop strategy, take note, through a design, formal process, where we think things through. We may design strategy by experience. We may design strategy by innovation, new ideas, new approach, doing things in the organization. Okay. And therefore, it's important that we encourage everyone, okay, to think new for the organization. Okay. And also, let's not forget that the top managers are not the creators of new ideas. Everyone can be guided to bring new ideas which may support the organizations. Okay. And when they come up, we must support them. So this aspect, this ideas, is similar to emergent strategy. Now, how do we use these three lenses that we spoke about now? Okay. Now, it tells us that strategy may be formed in different means. Okay, and there's no single correct approach by which we develop strategy. Okay, they all can fit into strategy. However, we must look at which one best applies to us that we can use. Yeah. To further this discussion, Mainsberg came up with 5 P's, okay, for strategy. And according to Mainsberg, strategy can be used, one, as a plan, or as a ploy, or as a pattern, or as a position, or as a perspective. What does this mean? Strategy as a plan. It means that it's like deliberate strategy. Okay, it is rational, it is well focused, well documented that this is where you want to go. And that's how we see strategy as a plan. Okay, and as we go through that, then we implement how we want things to be done. And that's the first aspect of strategy as a plan. It is in line with a deliberate strategy, which is planned, carefully thought about, or carefully thought through to implement a strategy. Then the second one, strategy as a ploy. If something is a ploy, what does it mean here? Now, it means that, well, you may want to take advantage of a situation should it occur. Okay, so if a competitor raises the price of its products, then we can also cut down our price. It's a ploy, it's a plan, or it's a strategy we are using. Okay, but this could be temporary. Why? So that we may send more businesses to our organization than to our competitor. And that's how we see strategy as a ploy in this regard. Okay, now as a pattern. Now, as a pattern, what does it mean here? Now, saying that strategy is a plan or a ploy is not just sufficient. It means that we must also see strategy in terms of the outcomes. Okay, now, if you are combining deliberate strategy with a major strategy, what is the outcome? Okay, what has happened in the past? Okay, as you follow this path, what is the outcome? So the key thing here, we are looking at strategy in terms of outcomes. So after choosing many alternatives, what was the outcome? Okay, and that is what or how we see strategy as a pattern. Then strategy as a position. Okay, let's not forget what we discussed about positioning. Okay, so we decide where we want to be in the business. So an airline company may have a low cost, okay, maybe as a strategy. Okay, so it positions itself as a low cost travel or low cost in the business. Okay, that's a positioning. And then strategy as perspective. What does it mean here? So this one means that now corporate personality and culture of the entity and its members. So who are the people behind the organization? So we see the strategy by looking at the people within the organization. Okay, so it's a collective way of looking at an entity that is shared by all its members. Okay, now, so an example is given here. So for example, the teaching staff in a private school may share the view that the strategy of the school should be to offer a broad-ranging and high-quality academic qualification or education to pupils. One of the top, okay. That means that everyone in the school may share this, and therefore we work towards that. That's how we see strategy from this perspective. Now let's consider the next aspect for this area, that is strategic planning frameworks. Strategic planning frameworks. Now, what is the purpose of the strategic planning framework? Okay, how would we plan and implement our strategy? There are two main planning frameworks, namely the rational planning model and the strategic gap analysis. Take note, rational planning model and the strategic gap analysis. Now, they help us understand the strategic framework. So this is how we see the rational planning analysis. Okay, so for this one, the key thing, the rational planning model, the purpose of the strategy is seen as achieving the objectives for which it was established. Okay, and therefore, corporate strategic planning is a formal process which management must lead from the top. Okay, then it comes down and down. So there are multi-layers. And at this level, everyone has a role to play. Let's look at an example of this. So in your book, page 149, there's a diagram. And the diagram talks about the mission. That's where it begins from. So every organization has a mission or purpose for existence. Okay, top. Now, the entity should have clear objectives from the mission. Maybe to maximize shareholders' wealth, okay? Or we have targets that will help us accomplish our objectives for the organization. Now, what is the environment like? So we conduct environmental analysis. Okay, so there are opportunities and threats within the business environment. We should be able to identify this, okay, and then put in place responses, suitable response to deal with these changes should they occur. We mentioned the fact that in strategy, there's positioning. Okay, so position audit. This time we assess the use of resources, systems, management, procedures. Okay, where lies our strength and weaknesses? How can we take advantage of our strength within the entity to remove any weakness? Okay, then the next step, corporate appraisal. So the mission statement and objectives together with the results should help us assess our strategy. Can we get there or we can't accomplish? If we can accomplish, what are the alternatives? Once you have alternatives, then we'll make a choice. And that's where we see the strategic choice. Once we make a choice, what is next? We implement our choice. And we put in place control measures. So if we're deviating, it brings us back to where we need to be. And that's what we see strategic implementation and control. So let's not forget that at this unit, we're talking about the final aspects, strategic planning framework. We said there are two. One is a rational planning model, which we just discussed. Okay, and the other one is the gap analysis. The gap analysis. Now, for this approach, the key thing here that there are stages. Okay, so we are planning, but there are stages, and we have to ask ourselves these questions. What are our objectives? Where do we want to be? Okay, where lies our current position? Where are we now? Okay, so where do we want to be? Where are we now? Then if there is a gap, what do? You try to fill the gap. It's like knowing where you want to go, assessing from where you are standing. So we've spoken about a corporate level gap. We've spoken about other levels or other gaps. Okay, so an example here, a gap may be expressed including total annual sales revenue as against profitability. Okay, so this what we project out projected sales revenue and profitability. Where are we now? Okay, so once you know the gap between where you are and where you want to be, then you have to fill the gap. How would you fill the gap? You may look at your environment, which plays an important role. Are there any threats that is preventing you? Are there any opportunities not taking advantage of? Okay, then identify how am I better than my competitors? That's a competitive advantage. Okay, let's look at our business objectives. To what extent are they being used well? To what extent are they realistic? Are they achievable? To use a smart tool. Okay, now are there alternative strategies? Can we assess them if those strategies can help us identify or accomplish our objective and we implement them? So there is a gap. To what extent? How can we help bridge the gap? And that's what the gap analysis will try to do. And it focuses on where you are and where you want to be. Okay. Now let's look at the last aspect of our chapter, organizational purpose and strategy. And that's our last aspect. And for this section, we'll look at the hierarchy of objectives and plans, the mission and vision, relevance of the mission statement, goals and objectives, who decides on the choice of mission and vision for the organization. And this area is very familiar with what you know. Okay, it's important that we review our strategy over time. Okay, and see whether we are in line with what we want to achieve. Okay, so we look at it in this way. To review, what is the overall purpose of our organization? Look at our mission. Is it still relevant, or we must make a change? We know what a mission is. It describes the purpose for which we are in existence, which we are in organization, we are in business. Okay, it describes the basic function in society in terms of our products, our services, and what we give to our customers. Okay, so we have the mission and the vision, which must be reviewed. Okay, then we have the overall aims, our goals, then specific aims, our objectives, long-term targets, our strategy. Okay, how do we implement? Tactical, then what do we do day-to-day? Operational plans. Okay, and all this should guide us as we want to review our strategy for the organization. Okay, now in writing our mission, which we just discussed, okay, Peter Drucker suggested that the following key things they have to come to mind as we want to write our mission. So the question is, what is our business? What are we into? What is our value? What will our business be? Okay, what should our business be? What will our business be, etc. Okay, so based on this, you may think and couch your mission. So you have examples of mission statements here by the World Bank mission. You have the Pfizer Corporation mission, Kodak mission, etc. Okay. Now, what is the difference between a mission and a vision? Before talking about a vision statement would define the present state or purpose. Okay. Now, over time, where do we want to get to? That is the ideal situation we want to find ourselves in. That is our vision. Mission explains why we are here today, and it explains the reason why what we do every day. But if you have a mission statement, what should be the relevance of the mission statement? Okay, so for the relevance, one, we see that it should provide a basic and consistent planning decision. That is one. Okay, it helps you translate a broader intention and purpose to corporate what you want to accomplish. It helps you know the reason, the common purpose for everyone. It should inspire everyone in the organization to work to accomplish the mission of the organization. Okay, that's how we see the mission of the organization. Now, if you remember, we discussed that after the mission, we have the goals, which are the general overall aims of the business. Okay, now for goals, we say that, well, sometimes people use the two interchangeably. Okay, now let's see goals. Goals are aims. Okay, and there are broad intentions. Okay. So an example here, your goal is to maximize the wealth of shareholders. Your goal is to be the world-leading business. What are objectives? They come from the goal. So if this is the main goal, how do you accomplish your goal? It comes from the objectives. And we know that for objectives, they must be SMART: specific, measurable, agreeable, realistic, time-bound. Okay. Now, some have added the ER aspect for SMART goals, and some say that they should be smarter. Okay. So if you look in your book, page 154, we have example of strategic objectives, okay, being explained in that context for you. But the goals and objectives, the bottom line, can be used to convert your mission into specific targets, which we want to accomplish as a business in existence. But the final question is, who decides the mission, the vision, the goals, and objectives? Mainly is the top management. Okay, if they have a board, the board will do so for them. Okay, otherwise, senior management organization have to make such decisions. Now, what have you learned in this chapter? We have learned about strategy mainly. Okay, we have learned about the strategic lenses, how to plan. We mentioned the rational planning and the gap analysis. Okay, we distinguish between a vision, a mission, goal, objective plans. And I guess at this stage, you can write a mission statement for an organization. You can try hands-on and let's see how it goes. Our next chapter, chapter 6, will also talk about competitive forces and markets. Let's meet doing that and let's discuss that as well. Thank you very much.